Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me in creating this Hillside Pendant. A very simple material list, very easy stitches, and you'll get a great finished product. Remember, if you do need any materials, check out the links below to shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. Gather up your materials and your bead board and let's get started. So to get started, I have my 14mm Rivoli here, my 8 OC beads, 11 OC beads, and 4mm fire polished rounds. I have some green 0.006 wildfire beading thread on a size 12 needle. I want to go in and start this with Hubble stitch. So if you're not familiar with Hubble stitch, you're about to learn. We're going to put 3 beads onto our thread and needle and let them drop down next to our stop bead. From here, you're going to sew back through bead number 1. That's going to pull this into a triangular shape. We're going to add 1 more bead, and we're going to sew down bead number 2. You can see how that creates. Basically, I call it my little foosball guy. His arms are facing up where his shoulder pads, head at the top. From here, we're going to repeat the same process. 1, 2, 3 beads on. Push those down next to the 4 beads or that first little Hubble stitch that you have. You're going to sew back through bead number 1, so starting at the opposite side, go from bead number 3 back through bead number 1 toward bead number 2. Push that against your first Hubble stitch, add 1 more bead, and down bead number 2. And you can see that's your second unit. We're going to keep going again. 3 beads go on. Pushing that down towards the last one. Take your thread and needle coming out of bead number 3. Go back into bead number 1, coming out toward bead number 2. Get that little triangle made. Push it toward the last one. Make sure it's not flipping. Add 1 more bead, your 4th in this Hubble unit, and sew down bead number 2. That's 3 Hubble units. We're going to do a total of 8 Hubble units. After creating your 8 Hubble units here, you're going to make sure that they're all facing upright. So that head is toward the top and the arms are facing at a Y. You want to make sure as you look the whole way around, because they will flip around, that you are still in that version of that Hubble stitch. See how they want to flip right away? From here, we're going to connect into that first Hubble stitch section. So we're going to connect number 8 to number 1, going into bead 1 from that first Hubble stitch and out. So you're going to be going in right next to the stop bead. That's going to pull them in towards the middle. What I want to do now is sew through bead number 2 from that first Hubble stitch. So down through, or I'm sorry, bead number 4 actually. So down through bead number 2 and out bead number 3. What we're going to do now is we're going to connect all of those bottom beads, which are always the 3rd bead in your Hubble stitch. Picking up 1 of your 11 O's, you're going to sew through the next bead. When you're sewing through that bottom bead, you want to make sure, see how that one was flipped? You want to make sure that those 2 beads are sitting in that Y, or almost that herringbone setting. Add your 11O, and then on to the next one. Grab an 11O, sew through the next bottom bead of the next Hubble unit. You're going to circle the whole way around here, creating a nice connected bezel for your 14mm Rivoli to sit inside of. The most important thing when you're doing this again is just to make sure as you're stringing that those Hubble units are all sitting correctly in that Y. If they're not sitting correctly, it's going to look a little funky. So I'm going in here and I'm adding 8 beads between the 8 units. Once you're back to the starting unit, you're also going to add one more of your 11 O's, and then sew back into that starter bead. I'm also going to sew through the next 11O as well as the next 8O seed bead, just to tighten up that base a little bit. You can see how easily we've created a bezel for this to sit inside of. Now what we're going to do is get to the exterior. So we're coming out through the bottom of one of our Hubble units, and we're going to sew through, that's bead number 3 always of your Hubble units. The little one sticking out at the top, that's bead number 4 of each of your units. We're going to sew back through bead number 1, one of the side Y beads, as well as through that head right there and out. That's going to get us ready to create and bring these 8 O's up towards the center of the bezel. Coming out there, I want you to add 1, 2 11 O's, one of your 8 O seed beads, followed by 2 more 11 O's. See how these points of all of our 4 beads, there's 8 points. We are going to sew through the next point of our stitch. Again, 2 11s go on, 1 8, 2 11s, and through that next point. So it's just circular at this point. 2, 1, 2, over to the next point. So you can see how this is just getting repetitive. I have 3 of my little peaks done, and I have 5 more to go. As you're finishing up your last of your little peaks here, I want you to go back through bead number 1 that your thread was coming out of, as well as we're going to step up to the top of that exterior. So we're stepping up to the top of that exterior row. From here, we're going to start to add in our 4mm Czech rounds. 1 11 O, 1 Czech round, 1 11 O. We're going to catch on to the exterior point of all of those 8 O seed beads. Adding a bead with the 11s on the side and getting our greenery in place here for our hillside. Super simple. You're just adding 1 11, 1 round, 1 11. I have 3 in place there. I have another 5 to go to decorate the whole exterior of our bezel set. As you're finishing this up here, you want to take note that there's a little bit of space. I don't want to pull tight and have that cup. I want to push that out because we still have more seed beads to add. So I'm going to take my 11 O seed beads and add 1, 2, 1 8, 1 2 11s, and you're going to sew into the next 11, 8, 11, and out. This is going to cup those beads just right on the exterior and give a little bit more of kind of a bezeled look. Again, 2 11s, 1 8, 2 11s into the next 11, 8, 11. We're going to continue this the whole way around the piece, and then we get to go towards the interior and create our secondary setting in the top for our 14mm Rivoli to set inside. So go ahead around the whole exterior, add in those seed beads to get that nice kind of full bezel set look, and we'll come back and we'll add in our 11 O's in the front to set our crystal in place. After decorating the exterior here, which is a really cute pair of earrings, you don't need to do the next step. You can stop here. We're going to go toward the interior and pick up those first beads again. Those top, that 4th bead of the Hubble stitch, we're going to go back down to there. So I'm coming out one of my 8 O seed beads. Go ahead and take your needle and thread, go through the 2 11s after it, and out through that same little Hubble piece. I want you to add on to your thread and needle a total of 7 of your 11 O seed beads. From here, you're going to go over to the next 4th bead in line. So remember those 4 beads that we added in, 2 11s and 1 8, we're now switching and we're just, see how that point's created? We're just doing 7 of our gold beads. Really simple. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Go over and add them to the next 4th bead in that Hubble stitch. So it's going to be the bead that sits right below your Czech fire polished rounds. 7 go on to the next. So I have 3 of these done, and I have a total of 8 to do, so 5 more goes, and then we get to put in our Rivoli and bezel around that too. So go ahead and keep adding the secondary row of petals in with 7 beads connecting to that 4th bead or that bead directly below the check glass in all of the tops of the Hubble stitch. As you finish adding your peaks there of 7, you're going to be coming through your first of your 8 OC beads that you added on the first group of 7, and I want you to sew up through those first 4 out of 7 beads that you added. So I'm finishing my last little petal of 7 there, and then I'm coming up through bead number 4. Coming up through bead number 4 and doing that odd count is going to allow me to bend all of these in to capture and go around the center of the piece here. Coming out of that single bead, that 4th bead, I'm going to pick up 1 more of my 11 OC beads, count over to the 4th bead and sew through. 1 more, count over 1, 2, 3 to that 4th bead and sew through. Now you can see I haven't put my Rivoli in place yet. I'm going to do about half of them, and then I'll drop the Rivoli in there and do a little tighter of a pull. 1 bead goes on over to my 4th bead here. Sometimes it will already be sticking up nicely as a point. I'm going to drop my Rivoli in, start pulling a little bit tighter as the bezel gets closer in. Bead goes on over to bead number 4. And obviously, again, we're doing this 8 times. This is my favorite, as you get to see all your hard work kind of paying off, although it is a really simple piece, creating and holding your Rivoli in place. When you get back to the beginning, you go back through that first bead in the grouping of 4, and I'm also going to go through my first 11 OC bead that I added and the first bead in the second peak of 7. See that there? Ready? There's the magic. You see all of that go in towards the center, all of those 11 O's positioned perfectly in the center, and that pendant and that Rivoli really just shining on the exterior edges. From here, I'm going to circle around through those beads 1 more time. So the beads that I put on, as well as the 11 O's that are already in there. And that's going to tighten up that first loop that is in the interior. It also positions those 11 O's kind of perfectly along the sides. So you have that pretty little pendant. From here, we're going to go up to the top of the piece, and we are going to create our bail right at the top here. To get to the top to do the bail, I'm coming out of the center. I've gone ahead and reinforced that 1 more time. I'm going to go down through 3 beads after coming out of one of those center 4. Just gonna wiggle my way through there. There we go. And I'm going to work my thread up till I'm coming out one of my peaks here of my beads. I'm going to start actually on the interior 8O. So I'm just going to look here on the thread and sew back through, right there along the 8, back through the 11s. Once I'm coming out of the 11s there, I'm going to then go through my 8O seed bead, and that gets me set and ready then to put on my bail section. To create my bail, I'm going to do it very, very simply. We're going to add 1 and 2 11 OC beads, followed by 1 of my 4mm rounds, just to hang it down there. 1, 2, 3, 4 of my 11 O's, and a couple more. 5, 6, 7, 8 of those. From here, I'm going to take my thread and needle, and I'm going to go back through that same 8 OC bead. From the same side that my thread is coming out of, I'm going in that same direction. So right now I'm on the back of my piece. If I flip to the front, see how my thread is currently coming out the right side? I'm going to go back through the right side of that same 8/0 toward the left side. I'm just going to pull that into a loop. Coming out here, I'm going to add one more of my 11/0s, back up through 111, my 4mm and 111. So the 4mm 11/0 before the 4 and the 11/0 after the 4. Give a nice tight pull. And then I'm going to repeat back here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of my 11/0s. And then I'm going to sew through that 8/0 from the opposite side and out. And if you'll notice then, you have your nice little bail here. And when you put this on a chain or on a cord, your cording is going to sit right behind that crystal, and you pretty much won't even see those little seed beads above. All I need to do now to finish this off is simply sew down the piece right here, just down the line of beads of the Hubble stitch and that little bit of netting. Go back to my stop bead and tie those 2 thread ends off. It's a nice, really, you can also see how the front, if you wanted to and you have more of that green color on the front, you could also make the front and that way of the pendant versus the gold in the front. You can do either version for the front of the piece. I'm going to simply tie these 2 thread ends together, burn them down, and my greenery hillside pendant is completed. Thanks so much for joining me in making this hillside pendant. Remember, it's reversible. It's hard to see here with the green screen because it's green. It's a reversible, fun Hubble stitch design that you can create with a very, very few materials that you may have on hand, or you may be lucky enough to get this as a kit. Remember always to comment below with your suggestions, ideas, change-ups if you tried out the color combos, as well as different counts if you're going from 11 to 15. All of that information really helps out this amazing beading community. Remember also to give a little thumbs up and subscribe. I noticed a lot of you don't subscribe, and I'm afraid you might miss things, so subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. As always, if you do need materials, check the links below to shop with us online. Thanks so much for joining me, and enjoy your new hillside pendant.